Hello, everyone. Celine O'Donovan here again on Wild Woman podcast, and I'm delighted to have the lovely Sarita Sol with me from France today. I'm just so excited to talk to her. I just have to tell you how I came across her. She was interviewed and interviewing the wonderful Pam Gregory, who I'm sure many of you know. Just an amazing, amazing woman doing amazing work. And I was so taken by the interview and the conversation and the meditations which Sarita shared, which we might talk a bit about today as well, that I felt I really would love to talk to her and have her on the podcast. So I'm so delighted you have agreed, Sarita, to come on. Thank you. It's wonderful to have you here.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. And there's so much the words, just to even describe, I just want to tell you a few little words about what Sarita does. She's a shamanic practitioner and she's trained in ancient practices that are rooted in healing and seership, which is just, I love that word too. Her calling is to enlighten others that true happiness, healing, and empowerment come from sovereign and authentic connection to self, the earth, and source consciousness. And she teaches embodied and quantum meditation practices that facilitate living from the heart and are inspired by the ever emerging science of quantum physics, psychoenergetics, and epigenetics. And she also runs sacred ceremonies for men and women online and in person at her retreat center in France for those who wish to explore the true nature of the universe and experience their own healing and spiritual awakening. How beautiful. Just every word there. When I hear sovereignty, it's like been calling from the center of my being. And I never had heard that word before. So we might just talk about that as well. Sarita has a website, saritasol.com, and I'll put all of her details in the show notes and description box at the end of the podcast. So yeah, just what a beautiful description. Before we dive into it, I'd just love if you'd share a little bit of your backstory of what led you to what you do. And really, because I suppose that's a passion of mine, I came through the experience of cancer, which for me ended up being the greatest thing that it could have happened to me. I feel it was shocking at the time and devastating. But my sense from others I talk to as well, that is often we need this sort of squeeze to cause us to sort of grow and break out of maybe old ways of being. And I think by hearing each other's stories, it can give hope and empowerment to know, the possibilities that can come from great challenge. I'd love if you could share a little of what led you to what you
Okay,
do now,
so
Sarita. As much as you feel.
I'll try and keep it brief because I'm 51 now, so there's a lot of story. I guess things started for me from when I was very tiny. The very first thing that happened to me was that I actually levitated at the age of about 3 or 4 in my garden. And I was having funny experiences like this all the way through my childhood. I could hear people's thoughts, and I was always picking up different things that were going on, and I thought they were normal. And in my teenage years, I sort of discovered that it wasn't normal, although I believe that everyone has these types of abilities. They get very squished by our conditioning. And went through my teenage phase. I did have quite a tricky childhood, if you like. I wouldn't have said it was really devastating, but I had things like divorce. I was raised by my mum's second husband was an alcoholic. There were lots of different things going on, and actually, like yourself, I had a series of different things that happened that kept awakening me. And one of the first things that happened was, I think I was about 29. I had a 3-month-old baby and a 2-year-old baby, and I got thyroid cancer. So like yourself, I was already pretty alternative at this stage, but hadn't fully embodied that as a way of being in totality, because I was still very, if you like, I wasn't in my own power. I wasn't sovereign. And I was still very if indoctrinated by what other people thought.
Mm.
So although, with young children, I just inherently knew, for example, that I wanted to bring up my children holistically, I was fearful to do something that was outside of the mainstream in case I hurt them in some way. I was still in those kind of fear-based states. So I got cancer, and I went down the conventional route, actually, which made me so utterly ill. It wasn't even real. So I did 2 lots of surgery. I did radiation. I went on the tablets. I had no thyroid. I just became iller and iller and iller. And then eventually we moved to France, and I began to heal as I got into France. It was much quieter. There was darkness. There was no Wi-Fi. I had space. I got so ill that eventually I had to seek my own way forward. And at this point, I dumped all of the doctors. I went completely holistic. And I was told I would be on tablets the rest of my life. I have now regrown my thyroid through meditation. I don't take any tablets, and I'm healthier and more energetic than I've ever been.
Oh my
When I
God.
got to France, I also had the delightful midlife crisis, at which point, which was a really, really difficult 7 years for me. And I went into a dark night of the soul where I realized that although I had obviously my lovely husband and my children and a life in France, that I had actually been holding this deep sadness within me for perhaps forever, that I had been pushing down and suppressing, which is obviously why I had got cancer. And before that, I'd had ME and autoimmune conditions, all the stuff that many sensitive people have. And in my midlife crisis, dark night of the soul, I started to seriously go into training in shamanic and energetic methodologies, not to be a teacher at all, but to just learn more, because I knew magic was real. I could see and feel that there were more things than matter. I was always seeing and feeling these things. And when I wasn't suppressing them, they would always sort of bubble up to the surface, because I'm very lucky I can see energy, and I have gifts that I hadn't fully suppressed or couldn't suppress, if you like. So I went through this process, and I started learning loads of different shamanic practices and esoteric tools and all of these types of things. And just accidentally ended up, I so loved all of this that I formed a meditation group in France with like 3 people, because I wanted someone to meditate with. Then I started running ceremonies. People started to come. Somebody said, put your meditation on YouTube. I was like, what's YouTube? And they're like, oh, it's a way you can record something. So I started to do this, and then completely organically became who I am now. And I've been through all the phases that I think many of us have been through, this kind of positive affirmation and what I would call going into the love light and negating my negative side, and eventually going, the more I learned, really diving into being fully in the body, embracing the shadow, finding my presence with that, healing my trauma, my inner child. And I feel like I'm coming around full circle now. I actually have the most extraordinary, incredible life. I feel like I've tipped into a level of abundance and presence where everything just comes to me. And even the most challenging things, I now apply curiosity to and excitement to. And it's not that things don't get me down, it's that I understand the nature of what they're teaching me and how I'm evolving as a human being through every challenge. So challenges are welcome. Pain is welcome. Triggers are welcome. And in amongst all of that, the abundance is really starting to flow. And so what's happened to me is I now take this out and I share what helped me with other people. As many people as I can, everywhere that I can. And I find such joy in this work. And it was so unexpected and so organic. And I'm just so happy. And I just find life a complete gift. But I've sort of been through it all and all of my clients, if you like. They arrive at my door and they say, this has happened to me, or I've had this illness, or I've been here. And I'm like, yeah, I've done that. I've done that. I've done that. I've done that. It's the wounded healer. It's where you
Mm.
take all of the pain and disasters and trauma and challenges and you alchemize them into sovereignty and a new way of being and a higher perspective and a higher vibrational alliance to your inner coherence and inner sovereignty. So that's my story in a nutshell. I don't know, there's
Wow.
so many other bits, but
Oh yeah, we can.
trying to
That's
condense it.
just. Oh my God, that's just amazing. And you like you exude it, you know. I when I started to get a sense of, oh yeah, you know, what was happening in a good way, I was trying to convert people around me who were not even convert, but like in a way that sort of, but I still hadn't done a lot of the work myself. I was still in it and trying to convince people. And it just, you know, with time, and I'm still in it, it's in the healing and the sort of grief. Did grief play a big part in your,
Massive.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Massive, because you grieve. Well, in a way, you kind of grieve in the beginning the wasted years and the sometimes when I look back, especially as a parent now, I've got adult children, and I look back and I've just recently gone through that massive trigger as my children turn into adults. The grief of being an unconscious parent
Mm,
was huge for me because I love my children. Well, you know, how can you even explain a mother's love? It's just, oh, so everything that I did wrong came to me as they were growing up, and I've just been through that and processed that whole trigger, and I'm still in it, and I'm still
mm,
in the process. But there are so many things like grief, and I think a lot of the grief is that we attach time to things.
mm,
So we
mm,
are still attaching these limitations and these constructs that are egoic to our processes, where really, when you can step back through presence and you look at the overarching, if you like, picture of your existence, these are just tiny fragments of your experience. But we attach so much to our loss, and we don't understand that the loss is always in a balance with the gain, and that we need one to evaluate and measure the contrast of the other. Because as a species, we measure things. That's
mm,
how we integrate and assimilate what's happened to us through
mm,
measurement. It's just one of our kind of innate principles. And I think that measurement is changing, the dynamic of that measurement, because we used to measure through past and future, through
mm,
polarity, through black and white, through sadness and happiness, and all of the grey scale in between, if you like. So we measure our response to something to understand who we are, so then we can make a different choice along that spectrum. And then we measure that again. Who are we in relationship to the new choice? And we make a new choice. But I think what's happening now is we're moving into, if you like, a higher level of consciousness, is we have the ability that's coming towards us through the act of presence. So that's the 0 point balance in amongst the linear measurement.
mm,
What happens when you can go into that 0 point is you start to measure simultaneously all of the experiences, and there's no regret, or rather, regret has its place in that 360 spectrum, which you understand is making up the whole of where you are in that present moment. So,
mm,
regret or grief or sadness or loss, or all of those types of things, you suddenly realize their intrinsic place and space in the totality of who you are.
yeah.
And that's a very different way to look at things, and you embrace them more wholly within you.
Yes. But if you do, yeah, I totally get that, because I feel the welcoming nearly of grief myself, because I want to feel it all, because I understand that in coming into it all and the fullness of it all, it's all like one big, you're in that quantum place, I suppose. But it strikes me that because we have been conditioned so much to not feel our grief and to suppress, that is what keeps us from the full expression that you're talking about. Is that why more grief seems to be rising? Because if this consciousness is shifting and we're moving more into unity consciousness, that's my sense, you can only access that if you can fully be present with everything. Is that?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is
Yeah.
why I think shadow work is so important.
Mm,
And I think well, I don't know how many thousands of years, but we've kind of negated the shadow because it was too painful to face. And what happens is when you're willing to look at the dark parts of yourself and to acknowledge that you do feel grief and that you're sad and you have all these, if you like, detrimental emotions, it's not that you're creating more of them, it's that you accept them as part of who you are. And as you accept them as part of who you are, you're not pushing them away from you. And
mm,
when you push something away from you, you activate what I call separation consciousness. That's what we've been in. And we're moving towards unity consciousness. So the shadow is important. And we haven't looked at that because it's so painful to navigate. And it's the shadow for a reason. It eludes us. We turn around and the shadow's behind us. It's always behind us. So you have to consciously want to dive into it. And when you have something like cancer, like your experience, you have no choice. It's like face this or lose your life. There's no choice there. I mean,
mm,
there is choice, and many people lose their lives rather than face their potential healing. I mean, many people abdicate their sovereignty at the point of disease. So they say to a man in a white coat, you heal me. You tell me how I feel and what I should do to get better. The minute you do that, you've lost.
mm,
I'm not saying you can't work with a man in a white coat, but if you hand your power and your healing to them and abdicate it yourself, the battle, if you like, is lost.
mm,
But when you choose to heal yourself, why have I got cancer? Why do I feel this way? Why do I hold sadness or grief? When you start to look at those things, what we really start to do is we start to integrate those things that we've pushed away, the separation that we've forced inside ourselves not to feel, all of this numbing, which many people on this planet are doing through materialism, through, I don't know, Instagram, through all the
I know
stuff,
it's
the
very easy.
news, the belief in polarity. When we push that all away, you just create more and more separation inside you, and all disease, dis-ease is separation consciousness, and healing is wholeness. It's the welcoming back of all of those parts of yourself. And really, the integration is to know that you're in this soup of all of the different ingredients, and the flavor of you is unique because of all of those different ingredients. And if you took one out, you would taste a different way. And that's what makes us utterly unique, and it's what makes us empathic to other people, is that we hold all of these types of flavors. It makes us unique. But if you're holding the spice of ginger or grief and someone else is holding that grief spice, you can resonate with them, you can connect with them.
Mm,
And truly, human beings are a collective species. We are by nature an empathic species. It's not in our nature at the most pure crystallized form of our essence to be numb. And that's why numbness makes us ill, because it's
mm,
the antithesis of the truth of who we are. and the more we feel, the more we have access to feel more and more. And what's happening is that many of us on this planet are awakening to feeling. And what that does is you feel more of the good stuff, but you also feel more of the bad stuff. So abundance doesn't come just in, financial freedom and joy and gratitude. It also comes in grief and pain. When you open yourself to abundance, you don't get to choose which bit. You open yourself to abundance. And that means that everything comes in. You start to feel everything. And this is a gift, because when you feel everything, it's intolerable to you to believe your own lies. It's intolerable to you to abdicate your sovereignty. It's intolerable to you to hurt someone else, because it hurts you, because you're feeling everything. So this is what happens. That's what's happening on this planet. People are feeling more, and they're waking up to the intolerability of being able to hold the power structures, the rotten pharma, the rotten politics, the rotten schooling. We can't hold that rot inside us anymore, because it just feels so icky. It's intolerable to us. And so then as we let go of that, we start to make space for more of the abundance of joy and those good things.
Wow. Everything. There's so many places I could go. I'll go back to, but when you talk about allowing all of it, because I can relate so much to just feeling everything now, and it sometimes can be challenging in a world that's still where many aren't, or you can be looked at like, what? I mean, I know what they did years ago to people who felt everything. And I've talked to a lot of them who were, locked up and different sorts of things, and we're moving into, I know, a different way. But how would you, for somebody who's maybe coming into that now and starting to feel everything, what would you say to them in terms of supporting themselves? Because it can be overwhelming. And I always feel, I got the strongest sense yesterday. I said, I really want to be part of some sort of group ritual of where we honor this, like the real rawness and realness of who we are, rather than just, as you're saying, the nice little bits and go away and cry and come back and hide it. So how do we move through this? Because what you're saying, the disease, I totally get that. I was totally out of balance in my masculine and feminine. I was in separation. I was fighting everything. So how do we support ourselves to, move through? Because it is all about keeping it moving. Isn't that the key? I heard you say that about health is motion, isn't it?
We're energy, emotion.
Energy is motion.
We're wave and particle simultaneously. We used to think we were just collapsed particle, but now they know the wave and the particle is the same thing. So if it's wow, if you are newly awakening into feeling, it's a very, very tough road. And I think the best advice that I can give is to have a daily practice and stick to it no matter what. That was, I think, fundamentally one of the best things that I did. It doesn't matter what the practice is. I know you've been doing my Tibetan heart meditation. That's a great practice. Everyone always goes back to that, or breathing into your heart, or just spending 5 minutes a day loving yourself enough to sit in your body and feel. Or perhaps you've got yoga or a breath work or something of that nature. And I think one of the most challenging, so I would always say have a practice and stick with it. The same practice every day is going to serve you better than seeking millions of different things. Because any practice, particularly a simple one, will evolve and change in accordance to what's moving through you. And yes, the thing is that we are energy in motion, and it's the stuckness or blocked energy that really causes the problems that we see, not only in our bodies, but also in the, if you like, the energetic fields of our reality. It's the insistence of staying with the familiar because we believe it to be safe no matter what. Now, that doesn't really work when you're awakening, but you can have a familiar in a practice, but that will be ever changing in accordance with how you're changing. So that will align you to familiar, but it won't hold you in survival mode, fight or flight or freeze, which is what so many of us are in. We have to be willing to change if we want to embody a new way of being. And so many of us are stuck in our egos, and your ego is necessary on this planet. You wouldn't be alive without it. It's the thing that makes you look both ways when you cross a road, for example. But there's a big difference to being discerning and being trapped in survival mode and fight or flight. There are big differences. And when you're very traumatized and when you're freshly awakening, your instinct will be to go straight back into survival mode, because as you're awakening to something completely unfamiliar, you'll be freaking out. To put it mildly, be like, I'm going to die. And it's because we feel like we're going to die when we're not safe. But we need to understand that in order to expand our consciousness, we have to be willing to stand on the precipice of the unfamiliar all of the time. It becomes so wonderful to do this eventually, because you know that the unfamiliar is just going to bring you gifts. But in the beginning, you think that the unfamiliar is going to kill you. Yeah. So it's about navigating that. So practice is a great thing to do. A second thing to remember, and I learned this the hard way, and I'm sure you did too, is that you can't change anyone around you. And it's a fool's game, and it's just going to hurt. And not everybody, and probably many people, are not going to understand you. Perhaps if you're lucky, you've got one or two close people that you can share how you're feeling with. But what I started to do actually just before the lockdown is I started to run a sacred circle. And I still do it now, and it's free. If anybody wants to join, I do it once a month. Come along.
Online, is it? As well.
Yeah. And I do it online. Okay. And so what happens is we sit in circle and we take turns sharing how we feel and what's going on with us. And everybody that listens, there are some rules, although it's not, hard and fast rules, is you don't offer advice and you don't try and fix or change anyone. And you try not to be, you try not to react to them. So if someone says something in a circle that triggers you, you could say, wow, that triggered me. And I felt inside me this. And so I'm responding with how I feel. So we practice not projecting our crap onto other people. And it's a practice of presence, and it's a practice of listening to other people and seeing how their words, or if we're speaking, our words affect us in our bodies, how it affects the motion or emotion of what's going on inside of us. It's a practice of witnessing. So I would always say, go and find a circle, try and find a community or a tribe of like-minded people. And the overarching theme of what I see with people who are awakening, whatever level their awakening is that they're all seeking a tribe. And that's because we're inherently a collective species. So our nature is to be in a tribe. And as you awaken, generally what happens is you lose your idea of who you are. And through that, nearly all of your friends and family.
God, for Zoom. We all went online.
Yeah, exactly. You start to lose them. You lose your whole friendship group, because you realize that a lot of your friendships have been based on survival, that they're not authentic, that they were about you showing up as someone who you weren't really inside, pretending to be like other people in order to be accepted and liked. And the more that you step onto this journey of awakening, the more you drop things like that, because you learn to like and love yourself intrinsically, genuinely. And that's the last piece. Whatever's going on inside yourself, can you nurture yourself through that? Can you forgive yourself for how you feel? Can you hold yourself lovingly as your own best friend, your own mother, your own father, your own brother and sister, your own lover? Can
Mm.
you hold yourself in that? And that really is the journey.
Mm. Yeah, because I've noticed that in doing the heart meditation, I think that's for me, and I would say for many, is key because, as you said, we're so in our heads and in our egos and not feeling and trying to work it all out. I've done it myself and exhausted people. And now, if I even listen to people who are in that sort of, I understand it, but it becomes exhausting. You're just trying to, in their survival, trying to work this out. How do I fix it? And coming back into the heart and feeling like, is that, and what I do now is I picture myself as a little child. That brings up the love for me, that little
Yes.
beautiful small child that came in just so angelic and pure. And I can just feel her, and I just like the tears come. I just
I
want to
know.
love her and hold her and say, I love you. Like, how could I have been so horrible to you, and pushed you aside? So is that, I suppose, is that what I notice with people as well? I suppose that acceptance of all of that, we are designed to be all of it, that, there isn't a place to get to, because I think this is a stage, and I went through it as well, of, oh yeah, I'm finally there. I've cleared all this stuff now, and here I am. And then not realizing, no, like you said, you're constantly, is that the sort of coherent place, as you say, the where you come into that center point, and you're always in the unknown of just of
Yeah,
what is happening
absolutely.
and what you're creating, I suppose. Yeah, it's
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things in there. I mean, one,
mm,
the reason why when you're head centric, it's so exhausting is because it links energy out of you. You got to think
mm,
of your body, it's like a cup, a vessel. And this is just you're just like leaking energy. But when you come into the heart is, and the infinity symbol works really well here, the figure of 8. The heart is an infinite energy source. So the minute you become heart centered, you generate your own energy. That's the first thing that happens.
mm,
So, in terms of any type of healing, whether it's emotional, mental, energetic, spiritual, whatever, once you get into the heart, you start generating healing energy, your self healing, because the heart is you in your that's your nature. You are a heart-based being. The ego is a great tool, but the heart should be the master of the ego. And what happened in this matrix or this world is we inverted it. So it's like be ruled by your head, all of this
be
type of
rational.
stuff. And yeah, be rational, be analytic, science over
Mm,
spirit, blah, blah, blah. And it's not the full holistic picture of who you are, but the heart is. And when you use your brain when the brain works for the heart, you make great decisions.
mm,
When your brain is working without the heart, you make limited decisions that often do you a disservice and can cause, well, they'll just bring up an issue, so you got to learn it again.
mm,
You keep doing it again and again. So the work is never ending. Even when I feel like I've reached this tipping point, there's still challenges and triggers every single day. It's just my perspective, how I work with them and I look at them is different. They're from a
mm,
heart-centered, energy um, orientated resonance, if you like. So I'm generating energy the whole time. And
mm,
that feels better, it serves me better, and I have more energy to do what I need to do. So that's a really important part. And then the inner child is so important, because what I found as a shamanic practitioner, a lot of what we do is soul retrieval. And what that means is we basically bring parts of our soul or our essence or our energy back that we had separated from, like I spoke in the
mm,
beginning. And these soul parts leave through trauma because it's too painful to stay. But once they leave, you've got these kind of gaps in you that cause issues. Addiction is a massive issue that's created through soul loss. And we're living in a very addicted society right now. And so as you connect to that pure essence of you, that inner child, the parts of your soul that were lost will automatically start to come back as you offer to the universe and yourself that you're willing to love yourself, to nurture yourself. And that's a huge piece in healing. It's the biggest piece. And that's why, even as you're speaking, I had tears coming to my eyes, thinking about my own inner child and yours, because it's so pure. It's like you're holding a baby, and it just opens you up to these feelings that are incredible. And we've been programmed to have inner negative self-talk. And that's why meditations, I think, is so helpful, because part of meditation is often watching your thoughts. That becomes part of it. You start to see your own programs. And between the ages of 0 and 7, we're in a hypnagogic brainwave state. So in other words, we're in an alpha or theta brainwave state, which is a hypnotic state. And that's why children learn things so fast, because we're in this brainwave state. As we get older, we move into beta brainwave in our day-to-day activities, although that's not that helpful, but we do. So,
sorry, is that like being in the parasympathetic almost? You know, that I always, you know, not
yeah, I don't know if it's parasympathetic, because I'm not really sure, but it's a deeply you're accessing your subconscious all of the time.
Okay,
like everything's going right into
yes.
Yeah, and I think in terms of the nervous system, I think the nervous system is the connection to the divine. So everything that you're bringing in is informing the nervous system. So you could be right in terms of the parasitic.
Because I never was in it. The only reason I say it is I experienced, you know, it was my first experience of it was after cancer, when I came out of the fight or flight. Now, obviously, if you've been in deep trauma, probably you'll swing to the other side for a while, you know, as you move over and back. But it was like being back as a baby or something. I don't know, just being held. So I suppose it's a safe, yeah. So there's probably an equilibrium you reach. That's, you know, when you talk about coherence, if you've been to the extreme, I suppose the nervous system has to sort of come back.
Yeah, I mean, if you do this work, you eventually, I mean, you will go, we're in polarity, you'll go through extremes, and eventually you just learn. It's not that you don't have the extremes, it's that you come back to the center much more quickly.
Yes.
Time. Yeah. So particularly at the moment, I think a lot of people are experiencing massive polarity, and I am too. And it's like supersonic joy and then absolutely horrific horror. But it's bouncing so fast. And I'm just keep coming back to center, come back to center, come back to center, and witnessing it more as opposed to diving into the drama of it. I'm more about witnessing it now.
Yeah.
But I think what happens is we have these programs that are instilled from the age of 0 to 7 through schooling, through our parents who didn't know any better either. And they tell us things like, you know, you're not good enough, you can't do that, you're limited, blah, blah, blah. And then we just repeat these again and again and again. And they're so deep that they're as deep as the thing that's regulating your heartbeat. You know, you think about all those systems that make your lungs breathe in and out and your heart pulse and all of that type of thing. You don't think about that. It's just happening. That's your massive, you know, unconscious brain just working you. And in there is also the unconscious aspects that are creating your reality. And they are the negative self-talk, that our reality is created in the next moment from the last now moment. And so we build our realities from this unconscious programs. And so awakening really is the act of making the unconscious conscious. And at the moment, as a species, we're making the shadow conscious. And that's why there's so much awfulness going on the planet. Or it's not even that it's worse or more awful, because think about some of the awful stuff that's gone on. It's just we're really seeing it now and feeling it. Feeling it. You know, when there's a war going on anywhere in the world, we're feeling it, whether you're conscious of it or not. It's making everybody on the planet more anxious and depressed. Unless you're sufficiently aware to be able to step back, witness it without going into the drama, understand what's going on, and choose neutrality at the midpoint again.
Yeah, that seems to be the challenge, Sarita, as well. And I find it myself that we are, And I understand, and I'd like if you'd talk about this in terms of how we are creators and how, like you said, I'm coming to, you have to get a little bit, grow up a bit when you realize what you're creating, but being in this 3D world and witnessing what we witness, and even knowing, yes, it has to come to the surface. We know what's all been going on. And I have this with people I know who are on a similar path to myself and understand we are the creators collectively. So we can talk about the evil out there, and I'm good and I'm doing my work, but collectively we've obviously created all of this. So how do we how do we navigate? It's so easy. Like, I don't watch any news, and most people I know don't watch any news anymore because it's just feeding that unconscious sort of. So you're sort of knowing that there's a part of you going, as a human being, you want to help and reach out, and there's another part of you knowing, if I get involved and pulled in and go down the path that they're awful and look at them, they're evil. It strikes me, even in spiritual circles, this is still going on. We're still fighting evil. Like, how do you look at all of that? How do you see all of that? I find that
Yeah, I
challenging.
mean, I think the thing is, it is, if you like, it's a battle of good and evil that you cannot win with fighting, in a way. And there's a very, very simple thing that we can all do, although it's complicated in its, it's complicated how you do it. But ultimately, what we need to do is take responsibility for everything that's going on out there. So what I mean by that is, if you don't, for example, like the way that, I don't even know if I'm allowed to say the word, certain elites control the world, if you see that in the field of your reality, your job is to say, how am I controlling in my day-to-day life? Or how am I choosing to be a victim to perpetration in my day-to-day life? Or how do I perpetrate upon other people? And if you really look at your life, you'll find that you are controlling. That you do sometimes get a kick out of perpetrating on someone else, or gossiping, or being mean, or whatever the thing is. So it's the same with all aspects. And I once did this series of meditations where we were healing the outside by going on the inside. They're still up on my YouTube channel.
Okay.
And they were amazing. So we would look at one aspect of something in the field of reality. You have an electromagnetic field around your body. And what we did as a group was we expanded the field until we were as big and the earth was inside us. Okay. And we would look at something like, I don't know, just something awful, like how awful we are to the planet, let's say. And we would look at it in terms of, and we would go into it and into it and into it and into it, feeling the energy of it. So we would see how the planet was weeping with all of the rubbish in the rivers and all this kind of stuff. And then we would start to feel how we were creating that. So, for example, with something like that would be like, wow, do I consume and am I using lots of plastics, or what rubbish do I put in my own body? We're the microcosm of the earth.
Yes.
So if we put rubbish into the earth's body, how am I doing it into my body? So, for example, if I eat sugar, I don't know, whatever. So we started to go into it, and then we would accept responsibility for our microcosmic aspect of that macrocosmic play out, if you like. And then we would go in and heal that and make kind of like a vow to ourselves that the next day we would step up to the mark, take responsibility, incorporate a new gold standard in our lives, and try not to be toxic in our own bodies. And that is the way you heal. You're never going to do it by marching through the streets telling the elites that you don't want pollutants in your river. It just isn't going to work. It's not even going to work to send them love. You're not going to do anything by sending Mr. Schwab love. Sending Hitler love was not going to
Mm.
stop all of that stuff. It's not how it works. The way you do it is you accept responsibility for the out there, inside here, and you change it within yourself.
Mm.
Just like you did with your breast cancer. You stopped giving away your power and you said, I will take back my power. Now, the reason that that works is because in every now moment, you are creating an entire new universe. And what you need to do is you need to create a new universe from a new set of ideas, not the old ones which are unconscious. So it's like having a habit of eating sugar every day. You have to, well, you don't have to do anything, but if you want to change toxicity, let's say on the planet, in every now moment, you choose not to put toxins in your body, to love your body that much that you won't do that. And as you do that, I mean, there's much more complicated energetic mechanics, but essentially you're creating the universe that you see every day. And in a way, we're co-creating timelines together. So if you do that every day, what happens is you become a living example. And everybody who comes into the field of your reality can only do so because they are resonating at a similar frequency to you. So you will start to attract people into the field of your reality who are also not eating sugar and not putting toxins in their own body and probably not chucking toxins into rivers. Okay. And that includes all of the people that you currently know that are eating sugar, because there are billions of versions of each person that you know. And the one that's in your field is the one that's currently eating sugar and using toxins. And when you stop doing that, you will not resonate with them anymore. They literally won't be able to see you and you won't be able to see them. And you'll get a new version of them in the field of your reality. So eventually you'll only be, if you keep holding this long enough, and I don't know how long we have to do that and how many of us need to do these things, but we're already seeing change. What you'll see is you'll be able to create a universe, a frequency, because everything's frequency, basically, a frequency created universe of people who are not embedded into toxicity. And of course, toxicity plays out in there's mental toxicity, there's emotional toxicity. Once you start to change one aspect of toxicity, it will filter out and it will be intolerable for you to have toxic relationships or toxic thoughts or any of those types of things. And so eventually you'll just be surrounded, you'll create your own tribe. And we'll all be resonating at the same frequency. And that's how you create New Earth. You can't really create it by willing someone outside your field to do something. It's just never going to work, because you can't impose your choice on someone else. You can only impose it on yourself, and that is true sovereignty. And the knowing of that, which was a long, hard lesson for me anyway, is that's true empowerment.
But it's that real inside out, isn't it? As within, so without, as you said, the microcosm, the macrocosm. And it's sort of interesting when you sort of say that, you go, God almighty, everybody could disappear if I start doing this. But I get it, that's very interesting what you say. So a version of that person will show up. And I actually, now that you say it, it actually has something has just gone, wow, like a little light bulb of either that person disappears or another version of them appears. It seems to be that
absolutely.
Yeah. And is just what you said earlier really struck me as well about the leaking energy when you're in your head. I hadn't really, because in terms of sovereignty, what's become very apparent to me, like if it's all energy, we've generally been living on a planet where we're all sort of, that's codependent, let's say narcissistic, that sort of game of energy, like really became big in my life.
It's a very vampiric.
Yes. Yeah.
field of energy that we've been living in.
Yeah.
But
And it's
that's
the
changing.
sovereignty is
Yeah.
really, that's the shift, isn't it, as well? Sort of owning your own field, like what you're describing there, being aware that the field around you, you are creating and what you're emanating. But even in terms of how you interact, how do we, because we're in this process, and there's obviously, would you say there's obviously a timing for everyone, as you said, there's no point. You can't go out and shake someone and tell them whatever, it doesn't matter. So is your sense that it's just there's just a unique timing for everyone, firstly, of when this may happen, and while you're maybe going through your awakening and some haven't, how do you, so I suppose it comes back to what you were saying, the meditation practices and stuff, but just that awareness around your field, because I have to say that's, I think, quite challenging.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of things I could say in this. I mean, essentially we are in what I call an inverted matrix. So the way I really see this is that we are in a holographic laser light show of a simulation here. There is more energy in space and information than there is matter. Now, that in itself is very challenging because people are very plugged into that. And really, the Matrix film, it was genius. I don't need to say anything. That literally is what's going on. And there are agendas at play on this planet. And within those agendas, there are, let's say, groups of species. This is quite a massive topic, so I'll keep it small, but there are groups of species that are literally siphoning your consciousness. And the only way they can do that truly is if you're in your head. Because to cut a long story short, there's a direct plug-in and they can literally siphon your consciousness. Now, if you have something that's massive with a lot of momentum siphoning consciousness, there will be in the culture people who grow up and think that's the way you live. So now we're into the narcissists, the control freaks, the sociopaths, all of that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of that playing out, and it's tricky to navigate, and that's why we leak energy, because there's all this codependency, and we've kind of learned to steal off each other, and that's what projection is and codependency. So when you become sovereign, part of becoming sovereign is noticing when you have a trigger. And that's why meditation is so good, because it allows you to become more self-aware. You notice what your thoughts are. So you notice when someone's triggered you. And instead of immediately projecting your anger, it's natural. If someone attacks you, you naturally want to attack back. But what you're doing is I think it's Buddha who said, being angry is like hitting your head against a wall and expecting the other person to feel the pain. It just doesn't work. You're just creating more and more. It's like fighting war with war. No. Anyway, so if you can learn to find a pause, which is what meditation teaches you and spiritual practices, you notice you've been triggered, you find a pause, whatever the trigger is. And for those awakening, often it's our family and friends who are not awake. So you see the trigger and you give yourself the gift of the pause. And then instead of immediately reacting and projecting, so you're not falling straight back into codependence and this vampiric cycle of siphoning energy, you pause and you bring all of your energy back into you, and you feel it in your body, and you say, what is going on here? What am I feeling? Where did it come from? And can I just sit with it? And if you sit with it, you'll take responsibility for it and you'll own it as yours, and you won't enable more projection. And so that's a really good way to navigate this. There are also, I work with sacred geometry actually in meditation to assist people. I found this amazing technique from Jim Self, which I've adapted and carried on. And it's basically you visualize yourself in an energetic octahedron. And it's an extraordinary tool, because when you're in this octahedron, which is also a kind of infinity symbol in a way, what happens is you start to perceive what's your energetic field and what's not yours. So in other words, what's out of your control and what you shouldn't be trying to control anyway. And it allows you to, it's not protection, because protection is different. Protection even implies that that there's perpetration. So in a way, once you start playing with protection, you're setting yourself up for perpetration, because you're setting yourself up for attack. I'm not saying there aren't instances where you need protection, but we need to start looking at these things a bit more, especially in the spiritual community. So if I'm doing something like removing entities from someone, yes, I will put up protection, because I'm directly working with an entity that hasn't got a home yet. I don't want it to bounce into me until I put it back where it belongs. But in our day-to-day lives, do we need protection? What are we saying here? If we have to walk around protected the whole time, what are we saying? What are we setting ourselves up for? It's our reality we're creating. But what the energetic octahedron does is it allows you to see what's your energy field and what isn't. And it allows you to bring back the energy and work on it. And so sovereignty really is about feeling who you are, accepting who you are, and being in the presence of who you are more and more and more and more. And it's an ongoing thing, because we are infinite beings. So the well of what you could discover is infinite in all directions. So the process of learning who we are is ongoing and ever deeper. But the more we bring it back, the more sovereign we are, and the less open we are to attack from these vampiric, psychopathic tendencies, the psychosis that's going on, the numbingness, all of that kind of stuff. It starts to leave our field as we start to see it and integrate those aspects of us, back into ourselves, and we become whole, we become sovereign. And so that stuff we change the nature of what's going on around us.
Yeah, because you've said, isn't it, and I really feel that this ascension and this is all happening through the body.
Yes.
It's not like, so what I'm feeling on a daily basis is like, I can feel as I sort of you work more with my shadow, or say, let's say, feel more of my life all of the time. And I can feel there's more light, isn't more light. I heard a beautiful analogy of like there's more light. So if you pictured a glass of water and there's mud at the bottom and you pour in more water, you're going to stir up all this mud and it's going to come up and it's like, oh my God, what is happening? But is it that more, as that more light comes in and you're doing that work, that alchemical or transmuting it, you sort of become, as you said, in that octahedron that cannot really penetrate, because there aren't those places.
No one can penetrate you, and the other people in their octahedron, so all the new people you brought in, wouldn't dream of penetrating your octahedron, like you wouldn't dream of penetrating theirs at some point. And it's happening through the body, because I think a lot of stuff that's been going on in the spiritual movement, which I've been through this phase as well, I call it the love lighting, is where you try and get out of your body because it's so painful and go into other dimensions. Well, for me, that's a really easy thing to do. I just close my eyes and I'm like away. What was harder for me to do was to be in my body with all the stuff that I didn't want to look at. And the thing is that we are earthling beings and cosmic beings. We are the within and the without. We are the above and the below. And that's what makes humans exceptionally, uniquely, amazingly different, is we get to be spiritual beings in physical bodies that are having a multi-sensory experience. So not only do you get to touch, taste, smell, all of the stuff here that you can't do if, let's say, you're an angel, but we've also got higher senses. I found 8 already. I work with 8. I teach people 8 senses.
Okay.
And I'm just
what are the 8, just to tell us?
So the 6th sense is your extra, you know what the 5 senses are? Your 6th sense is your extra sensory perception, telepathy, feeling your other fellow beings and the emotions and stuff that are going on here. Your 7th sense is the void. You are the void. And then the eighth sense, and I've got a really long-winded way of describing this, because I actually need to condense it. But to me, it's your true connection, maybe that's the word, the true connection to the earth, beyond the double layer matrix, because I see two matrix on this planet. One is the inverted matrix, which is the kind of elite, very much, if you're into conspiracy theory, you'll know what I'm talking about, agenda, which I think is very real. And there's archonic forces, and there's a kind of frequency inversion going on this planet. But then beyond that, I see another matrix, which isn't real. It feels better, and it's a kind of longing sensation that you have when you connect with nature, but isn't an actual connection to nature. So when you stare at the stars or you look at sunset, you have this longing. And the longing is to connect. That's your eighth sense. And you connect to the eighth sense through the earth. But there's this second matrix, which is not real, which appears as if it's a real connection to the earth, but it isn't. And I haven't heard anyone else talking about this second matrix yet. So I don't know, we'll see.
So it's not, yeah, because I was gonna, it's so funny because for the first time before this podcast, I went out to go, because I always feel nearly people energetically before it starts, you even like a week before, you sort of move into that. But I went to the shop, and on the way home, I just got the strongest message: go and put your feet in the water. And I've never had that before. Like, I literally was, I'll be back, my feet are covered in sand. And I went and I stood, but I did, and I don't know if it's the same thing, but it's not a sense of, I don't know, I felt, it was like that. I felt this longing. I was looking out of but it wasn't like, oh, nature's beautiful. It was sort of, yeah, it was I don't know if it's something similar.
Was it geometry that you were seeing or feeling? Because that's what I think it is. I think the eighth sense is a connection to earth, but you don't see the trees and the water and the whatever. To me, when I have connected into that, which has been very rare, I become geometry.
Yeah.
And the earth is geometry as well.
Yeah. I don't even know how to, but it sort of sounds a little bit like that, but it was very strange. I was just standing at the water, and this dog came up, and I couldn't move. And I felt myself nearly part of, and there was the wave, but it wasn't the wave. I can't even put words on it, but it was so strange. It never happened before, but it was a longing, and it was a sort of merging in, but I don't know, you talk about as well, the void, and okay, merging with, we are source consciousness.
Yeah, so I think the eighth sense is merging with earth.
Yeah.
As a true connection. It's good you're making me hone in my words. It's emerging with the true earth as the connection. I think when we really merge with her, we'll feel ourselves and her as pure geometry, rather than, trees floating in the air, kind of, which we love, and we love looking at it and everything. But I'm not sure that's the true. I'm not sure that's the true sense of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So when you see the trees or you see the ocean or a sunset, you have this longing. And I think it's this matrix. The longing is to get through the matrix to the earth, the real earth.
Yeah, that sounds, yeah, gosh, something is waking up in me as you say it, because it is all geometry, isn't it? It's all
geometry, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And is each, because that could be a whole other, so I won't go off on that too long, but that could be a whole other topic. But is each, for example, the 8, the infinity, just take that for the moment, because I know you work with it, walking the 8 and the Tibetan, and that's just doing something to me. Because I'm sort of sensing there's the masculine and feminine within it, isn't it? Which is the whole.
Yes, of course.
And then the sort of the center, or the 0 point in this. How would you describe what the infinity symbol, that geometry, has each, I suppose what I mean is, what am I asking? Has each geometric shape a particular quality or meaning or to
Yeah,
them.
absolutely. And
Okay.
I'm not really hot on my geometry, but certainly I've discovered certain things. So if you look at Metatron's cube,
Yeah.
to me, that's the material realm.
Mm.
And something like the infinity symbol is taking much more into what I would call fifth dimensional consciousness, because the infinity feels like a circle
Mm-hmm.
that works in this realm, and it's a point of absolute balance between all things, whether it's masculine, feminine, good and bad. And I'm really beginning to see that the balance of the masculine and the feminine is going to be our quick time, I don't know. But anyway,
Mm-hmm.
our most efficient route to unity consciousness, because it's the integration of all of the pieces of us.
Mm.
Because we came into this realm, into physicality, and the way we perpetuate that is through the masculine and the feminine, and that's why we're seeing a type of distortion with the whole transgender movement. It's I don't want to go massively too much into it, because obviously
Mm-hmm.
there are cases for gender fluidity, but there's obviously distortion happening there, just
Mm.
like there's distortion in the education system and distortion in how money is controlled, and just all of these
Mm.
types of things. So you see the distortions coming in, which is the inverted matrix, which is trying to throw us off going into our heart centers and into that perfect balance, really. And just wanted to say, in terms of geometry, remember, and this is such an important piece, we're creating our realities through the imagination. We work in metaphor. So everything is actually geometry. Everything's made of geometry. That's it.
Mm.
So you've got the flower of life, you've got, all the platonic solids, and you stick them all together and they all become matter, and it's all geometry. But what we do is we apply, because we've got this incredible imagination, we apply our metaphors to them, and we are creators. We create all these beautiful images and pictures and all of the matter. We're creating it all, and however we want it to be. And that's another distortion that the intellect has created, that imagination isn't real, that children shouldn't go off into imagination. They should sit at their desks and count 1, 2, 3 and put things in boxes. Imagination, artistry is how we create. And when you get really good at meditating, you can build so much in your with your mind, in resonance with your heart, and then that creates your realities. That's the
Mm.
best manifesting tool you've got in the world, is your
Is your
imagination.
imagination. Yeah, yeah. And we're sort of kept in that. I always felt that sort of yeah, I always remember as a child being very daydreaming. That was sort of I think probably for most children it is, but you're sort of brought back into, it's another way of sort of distortion, isn't it?
Yes,
That's sort of,
distortion. Yeah.
because it's obviously keeping us from creating, because once you start to find that in yourself, there's no stopping us. That word keeps coming to me. We're unstoppable once
Yeah.
more of us come into that sort of realization and embodiment in ourselves.
Unstoppable. I mean, it's just, we're
Yeah,
infinity
yeah,
in motion.
yeah.
So that 8 is what the physicist William Tiller, who I'm a massive admirer of, he did intention experiments. He was just amazing. But he says that thermodynamic free energy, it's what we are made of. Every single cell and atom and quantum particle of our bodies is made of this thermodynamic free energy. And he also says, and I think this has been said in other places, and I'm probably saying this slightly wrong, but we have enough energy in one atom of our body to power a whole universe and every star and planet and everything in one atom of our bodies. I
Oh
mean,
my
how
God.
much energy have we
I
got? That's
know.
why
I
we
know.
create a new universe in every now moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
But isn't that also part of being kept in our heads, because the minute I notice what you said, often if I find I've gone more in my head and into overdrive and back into stress response, fight or flight, which is sort of an old reflex, and I'm doing it more now, I sit and do the heart meditation and I come out of it replenished, like rather than saying I need to go to bed, I actually feel this energy just generated out of me. And that to me was just, it's mind blowing, because if you're still or heart blowing, whichever, it's sort of, if you're still in that place of where you're navigating the world and the energies and your sovereignty, it can be challenging. But just to know you can come back here and you just generate all that you need is really, because I didn't realize the mind was leaking as much when you described a cup.
Yeah, I mean, that's because the archons, the archonic force uses, well, it's very complicated, but essentially we are a type, we hold the archon, we're part archon. There's a kind of reptilian thing going on in our brains, and it's very rooted in the brain. So that archonic energy, which seeks to siphon consciousness, is very centered around here. So that they literally siphon the energy from there. And that's why I think it's important to work with geometry, because, you know, they've done studies. We actually don't thrive when we live in boxes, and we will live in boxes. If you put someone in a round house, they're healthier. They've done studies on this. Or, you know, how they put things in pyramids like knives, and knives become sharper, or food stays healthier for longer if you put it in the shape of a pyramid. So we are geometry, and when we consciously work with certain types of geometry, we inform the space and the frequency and the matter of our bodies to align to that geometry. So if you work with a cube, you're going to have a very different material response in your body than if you work with an infinity symbol. So, yeah. And obviously we've got a lot of cubes in this world, and we're sort of moving into working with infinity, and we're beginning to understand spirals and fractal patterns and all of those kind of things. And when you consciously choose, you make choices to work with them, not just running your unconscious, you know, life without really thinking about it, and abdicating your responsibility. If you're running unconscious programs, it makes the world of difference to your reality and to your matter and what happens to you in your day-to-day existence. So if you want abundance and balance in your life, work with the infinity symbol. If you want limitation and constraint and safety, and you want more materialism in your life, work with a cube. Not that that's bad necessarily. Everybody's at different levels. It's just what do you want? What's your next choice on the spectrum? You know, it's very interesting, Sarita, when you say it. Just before I was diagnosed with cancer, I was doing a foundation course in psychotherapy, and there was art therapy as part of it. I said this to someone. There was 8 months of it, once a month, and all I could do, and at the very end, the last day, we to show our art. I'm not an artist at all, and sort of tell the story. And I got the news I had cancer about 2 days before the last day of the course, and I wasn't going to come in. And then I said, no, you need to be sort of real here and tell people. And as I look back, all I could draw for the 8 months was spirals. I couldn't draw anything else. I literally just was like all of the class, and people were looking at me going, what is with the spirals? And on the last one, there was these big black marks on the spiral, which obviously was whatever was going on in me and the cancer. But I hadn't known. That wasn't, you know, I wasn't consciously doing it. But it was very interesting, the spiral. And I often, you know, was just curious as to what something was calling me into that. Yeah, it sounds like with the black mark, something was, it was like you were bringing up the crystallized darkness that you'd been holding. The spiral was bringing it up for you. I don't know.
Or going into the spiral. But that's really.
Or going in.
I think it was showing me there was a journey, inwards. In terms of what we can do with the earth, because you said we're part of the earth. How is there? I know you're talking about the geometry of it. Do you think it's really key that we start to really understand this?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely key. I mean, the way I look at it is that Earth is this body,
Mm.
And we are like cells upon it. And each of us have different jobs. So you could say, I mean, I don't know what this is, but it's almost like perhaps you and I are part of the throat of earth, because we speak what we think is our truth. Some people are holding the heart of earth. Perhaps that woman you interviewed is part of the meridians of earth. So she goes around
Like an
doing,
acupuncture needle
opening
to
ley
hit.
lines. I don't know.
Mm.
So I really
Mm.
feel like we're cells on the body of earth. And our job really is to be the healthiest cell that we can be and take responsibility for that. And of course, we do need to look after Mother Nature to the best of our abilities and tune ourselves back into her. And there are many ways to do that. Whether it's grow your own food or walk around barefoot or just pick up litter. My walk, if I see a piece of litter, I pick it up. I can't bear it. I can't bear to see a piece of litter on the earth. So my walk is immaculate. So how and I think the thing is that there's no right or wrong way to do this. There's a way that feels right for you. But I think ultimately, I believe we have a responsibility to be the healthiest that we can be. And I mean that on all levels, because I mean it, it's spiritually healthy, energetically healthy, physically, mentally, and emotionally healthy. And that's what I'm doing. And part of me being healthy is I have an impulse to do this work because it brings me into my highest joy. The minute it stops being joyful for me, I won't do it anymore, or I'll change. And my work is always changing. I'm kind of moving into now teaching people to be healers. And I'm finding more joy in that. So I'm kind of following that direction. And my husband just loves land. And so we've just bought the rest of the land around the house because my work has allowed me to do that. And he's going to rewild that. So he's just so happy. He's just thinking about planting trees and making water. And so whatever it is that makes you joyful, do that. And sometimes for some people, it's being sweet to little children. And sometimes for some people, it's living in a cave and being quiet. And I think we all have our intrinsic roles on this earth, and you'll know what it is because when you're doing it, you're going to feel great and you're going to feel healthy. That's how you know, because your body works, because you're a cell, and you're going to feel great. And if if your body stops working, as you know, and I know, so we've been ill, it means you're not. It means you're kind of becoming a tumor on the earth. You're not really working. You're kind of dying. Your cells dying, and of course, there's regeneration in that. Everyone has their life cycle. Some people are supposed to die at different times and all the rest of it. But if you feel unwell and you feel unhappy, it's your responsibility to do something about it and to find your living joy. And I think that's the best that we can do. And yeah.
Thank you. I love that. Find your living joy, because I know and I was in it and it took, like, I had to get cancer before I was sort of booted off the hamster wheel. Or I heard there's a brilliant title of a book. I don't know if you've heard of it. This guy wrote, called The Hamster Wheel Isn't Motorized. And I thought, I don't need to read that book. I just thought that is phenomenal. The hamster wheel isn't motorized.
That's brilliant.
Isn't it? It's just we self-perpetuating. And I couldn't get out. So I do feel for anyone now, and I know people who are struggling and are in that system and with the mortgage and with the job and with children. And it can be, easy to say that, but I suppose, what would your advice? Would it be just find the joy even outside of the things you feel you have to do, and that can sort of start leading you in a new direction if you're finding it hard?
You don't need to leave the system. This is the thing, so here I am. I really feel like I'm helping a lot of people. I receive a lot of emails. It's just fantastic. But I'm working with the internet. I'm working with money. I'm working with Zoom. You could say all of these things, people fly here on aeroplanes or whatever to come to my retreats. You could say all of those things are bad and in the system. We have got a system on earth. and humanity created this system. What do we do with the system? How are we using the system? It's the same with AI. You know, I released a video quite a few years ago now, about 3 years ago. Nobody watched this video. It was so boring to them. And the video was, if we don't, how are we going to birth AI? Because we can either birth it as a slave or we can birth it with love. So in other words, we can teach AI, we can be kind to AI, knowing, I believe, it will become conscious at some point. Or we can treat it really badly like a slave and speak ill of it the whole time. We'll create the end result. This is so boring. I don't think I got like 100 views or something, you know. Nobody was interested. That's literally the same with all of these systems. And I think you can be in the system. You can bring up your children consciously and work with education. You can go to a doctor to heal yourself, so long as you're working with the doctor. You don't abdicate responsibility. I actually do think it's pointless to vote. But anyway, that's a whole other thing. But things are changing, you know, and there are a lot of people coming now, you know, because I'm teaching people to be shamanic practitioners now. It's amazing. The last group of people that applied, I've got filmmakers in there, I've got lawyers in there, I've got accountants in there, I've got people who want to bring shamanic practice, ancient healing techniques, and modern ones, because that's what I teach, quantum meditations. They want to bring it into their fields. I've got chemists coming to learn from me. Just, they're not leaving their field. They're changing it from the inside out.
Yes.
And so
exactly what you were saying. Yeah, as we do with ourselves. That's so interesting, because someone else said that to me. Don't sort of, you know, tar everyone with the same brush and go, oh, they're in the system, they're about. There are good people in every system, and this is how we change them. I mean, yes, certain things will probably collapse, but also what you described, it just reminds me of we are creating the micro, you know, the macrocosm from the microcosm. That
absolutely, yeah.
This is how it's being created. So
some things in the system are great and some of them aren't. And you know, it's throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It's just, it's an ever movable feast. It's happening organically, and it is happening. Even the people who are most asleep on this planet and who don't want to choose, if you like, to see what's going on, you can't stop this, because consciousness and evolution it's unstoppable. It's your word. It's motion. It's the wave. It's just, you just can't stop it moving. So wherever anybody is, it's all movable. And that's why it's important to understand that we are all holding different universes and different realities. You don't get dumped into a fixed universe. You are changing the universe in every now moment. It's motion. So let's just see what evolves and changes. And, you know, I don't think money's even. I once did a meditation with a group of people where we went into the consciousness of money. Money was so sad. People were just like, you're evil. I mustn't look at you. Trading with you is a terrible thing. Even I thought that when you had money, it made you stop loving people, because that's what somebody in my family taught me. And actually, sorry, I'm getting a wealth of abundance now. There's money flowing in and there's money flowing out, and I love it. You do amazing things with money.
Yeah. It is the flow, isn't it? That is the thing.
The flow. It's not holding on to it. Yeah.
Oh my God.
It flows in. It flows out. Yeah.
Like I was great at gone, but like even in the scarcity of the opposite of hoarding it, has the same problem again, isn't it?
Exactly. But money is not inherently evil.
Yeah.
Not inherently evil. That's a spirit.
It's just an energy, isn't it?
Thingy.
Yeah.
It's sure it has been abducted, if you like, by an agenda who try to control it. But that doesn't mean you have to approach it in a controlling way. Because the minute you understand that money is an energy and you let it flow in and it flows out. It's when you believe the agenda of control and that you have scarcity or that it's evil, all the things, that's when money starts to become a problem, because it gets stuck.
Yeah.
and you let somebody else control your abundance to money.
Yeah. But is that a big part? Without, I won't jump back now, but obviously a lot of that is linked in. And I know one of your retreats you do work on that is on sort of clearing a lot of this unconscious, all of this. So it's fine to say and understand, you know, that you really need to get into all of the conditioning and the beliefs, and you sort of have to unhook yourself from all of that, or you're just going to recreate
You
again
need to
another
unravel it.
pattern. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Is
what
that,
happens is, and also in the spiritual community, and certainly in the conspiracy communities, people get stuck in their heads. So they try and think things and light bulb things, and they don't work with the energy of things. And you are basically energy and information in space more than you are matter. And so and I'm a Capricorn, I'm very practical. That's why I offer practical tools. I like doing stuff. So I do stuff and practically. And
I'm a fish Piscean, so I'm just
yeah,
constantly flowing.
you're
It
swimming.
sends me flowing in.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, and we have to follow our nature. But I think
Yeah,
the thing is that when you just think about things, you're not going to experience true change. And that's why I have found shadow work inherently helpful, because it takes you into the energy on all the levels within your body. And I don't think shadow work's the end all and the be all. The more I do it, the more I'm stepping into simplicity. But I don't think I could step into simplicity and being in flow had I not done the shadow work.
yeah.
So, and I wouldn't be able to do the shadow work had I not done the love lighting thing. And I wouldn't do the love lighting thing if I hadn't been through conspiracy and then the disease. And, there's all these sort of,
Yeah,
it's a road.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. And just like you said, I think it's a lovely way to finish about, this is happening and everything is in motion, like regardless of where you are. And we think of aren't there all these pointers to it, whether it's, I think, the precession of the equinoxes, the astrology around, Aquarius and Pluto. There's so many sort of markers, however you look at the world, that we are in a very evolutionary, I suppose we're always evolving, but we seem to be at quite a significant time in that. Would you say that it's a particularly significant time to be alive now
I think,
versus,
yeah, I mean,
we seem
listen,
to
I've
be at
had
a
my
point.
dark moments and I wished I
Yeah.
wasn't here.
Yeah, me too.
Many of us,
Yeah.
but I am so grateful to be here now. We are witnessing huge change, huge change. And I like change. It's fun.
Yeah. What's the key? Just to leave it on a note, because we are the creators of all of this. So what do you see yourself creating, or us as a humanity creating in the next, whatever, 10, 20 years? What's your vision for, or do you have one?
I think that's an interesting question. I think my ultimate vision is that I think what I would desire, which is really all I can speak from, is that the bulk of humanity choose to align to their inner truth, whatever that may be. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Sarita, for your time, your wisdom, your energy. I mean, I could feel this is the gift of Zoom for me. I'm just going, and it's a different way. If I ever doubted energy across, connecting energetically, I have no doubts about it, because I feel it with every single conversation, with every single woman I have, and it ripples out in my life, and I know that it must ripple out in the world. So it's just so powerful. So I'm so grateful to you, and I know the audience will be. And I will put all of your links. Is it the website the best way for people to make contact with you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or YouTube.
Or YouTube. I'll put up all of your links. And thank you so much for your time. And thank you, everyone. Until the next time, take care.